Okay, on the show today, Carolyn Lovewell, formerly Carolyn Elliott, author of Existential Kink. The first thing to say about this woman is we love her. I've been talking to my audience, they absolutely love her. I read the book myself at the beginning. I was like, oh, this sounds a bit woke. Am I gonna like it? And I loved it. And then I gave it to my PA. My PA loved it. Actually, I think she might have suggested it, so thanks to Vish. And then my girlfriend loved it. And I've been showing my students and they've been loving it. So it's clearly as interesting as it sounds. We're going to look on her work on sort of shadow integration, hidden desires, meditation's part of it. And actually just before I open up, I'll say I had an experience where I was on the plane a few days ago and I'm scared of flying. And I thought, you know what? I'm scared of flying, but I keep flying because it's part of my job, my life. I thought, this is weird. I thought, what if I enjoy it? I thought, how can I possibly enjoy being scared of flying? And I thought it's kind of exciting being in a metal tube. And I was on British Airways and I imagined a very nice mustached man who I'd met on the way in, who I was completely under his control. And normally, that's a little bit of giving up of power. I thought, you know what? I'm giving up a lot of power here. This is quite kinky. I'm a flight sub. And then I enjoyed the flight a lot more. So thank you for that, Carolyn, and welcome.
Wow, Mark, that is an amazing metaphor for all of life you just gave us. Thank you.
Who doesn't want a nice moustache British man telling them what to do, belting me up? So, let's hear a bit about your life story. How did you get interested in what you do now?
Oh, thank you. Okay. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where I still live. And I my childhood was rough. My family was very massively dysfunctional. And I had a lot of pain. And I experienced all sorts of abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse. And when I was a teenager, I was a heroin addict, and I sort of narrowly, by the skin of my teeth, escaped that death trap. And I was always really good at school. I got into a good school. And how did I get into this particularly? Well, um, I went through the process of getting a PhD in critical and cultural studies. So, critical and cultural studies, it's basically an all-round humanities education. So there's a whole lot of history, psychology, philosophy, and it's basically majoring in wokeness is what critical and
I was
cultural
going to say,
studies.
give him that degree. Your book wasn't that woke, so I'm actually now kind of impressed.
Well, because it was the process of getting that PhD was also quite abusive. I realized that academia is sort of the definition of an abusive cult. But there were some bright spots in that education, and one of those bright spots was I encountered the work of Carl Jung. I encountered the work of all of these kind of German idealist philosophers, including Heidegger. I encountered Sigmund Freud, Nietzsche, and all of this was swirling around for me with, let's see, how do I explain? I had had a terrible eye injury in the middle of grad school. So my cornea was scratched. I wore a pirate patch. I was in pain all the time. I could barely read all the thousands of pages they wanted me. I couldn't. In fact, I couldn't. And so I ended up just reading things that I found inspirational. So I was reading a lot of Emerson and New Thought, and I was part of a New Thought church. And anyways,
New thought? I don't know.
New Thought is basically it was a 19th century American movement that came out of the work of Phineas Quimby, Christian Science. Mary Baker Eddy was a big part of it. Sort of the idea that we can heal ourselves with our minds. And I desperately needed to believe that because the doctors were telling me that if my eye was the only way for my eye to stop hurting, because I was in 24-hour pain, was to have it removed. So I didn't like that option. So I was taking the option of praying. And anyways, I had some deep spiritual experiences that surrounded the healing of my eye. And oh boy, I'm trying to give you a nice condensed version here. Basically, I got very interested in the idea that our desires do have an impact our desires, our thoughts, our emotions, our understanding of ourselves have an impact on what we happen to experience in life, what we draw into our lives. And certainly I was reading a lot also, like I said, of the fathers of psychotherapy, Jung, Freud. And I understood that we also have unconscious desires. So fast forward, I got my doctorate in critical and cultural studies, and I discovered basically the only job that you can get with such a doctorate are the same jobs that you can get without such a doctorate, right? So I was sort of limping along, trying to get by, living beneath the poverty level, sleeping on couches, eating out of dumpsters. And I had been, previous to that, I'd been living on a PhD stipend for the first decade of my adult life. Anyways, I was experiencing poverty, and I was experiencing all of the shame and pain that came with that. Like I didn't know why I couldn't figure out how to be successful in life. I was supposed to be smart. Everybody had always told me I was smart, but here I was just floundering. And one day I was standing in line at the food bank, waiting to get some food because I didn't have money for food. And the thought came to me, I wonder if there's some part of me that desires this or enjoys this. And it was such a strange thought. And I just continued to feel into that thought. And I realized that there was some truth to it. There was a part of me that was finding the experience that I was having to be fun on some level, thrilling even. There was all of the, will I or won't I be able to pay my rent this month? How will I survive?
Let's take a pause here because this is the key. This is kind of like a in your own life, but also maybe in your work. And when I've sort of shared it with people, just not teaching or anything, just sharing a little bit about it with students, some will go, you know what, maybe I do want to be poor. That's a common one for a lot of my hippie students or whatever it is. And then if it's something even worse, abused or something, it's like some of them go, maybe part of me on some level wants this, and others just go, no, obviously I don't want it, bugger off, get lost.
Yeah, obviously.
It's just, and it's almost offensive to even ask them that question, right?
It's super offensive. It is the offensive question. It is the most, sometimes I feel like if people really understood the message of my book, they would come burning me down with pitchforks and torches, because it's completely counter to all of the current messages of our society, which is all about the victim Olympics. And
you're like the least person I've ever interviewed for someone with that background. Like, you just don't strike me, if I may say so, as a victim in any way. And there's a cult of victimhood essentially now in the world, right? That's the religion of
Well, indeed. And the thing about the cult of victimhood is that it doesn't give any out from being a victim. And I guess it was just, even though I had experienced a lot of pain and adversity in my life, I did not want to see myself that way. So I was willing to, and so Existential Kink offers, I like to think, it's like a fun little lever. It's like, here's the lever. If you apply this lever to your whole experience of life, you can completely change it. I mean, you're right. Today, I'm absolutely not a victim. I'm a multimillionaire. I have 2 beautiful children and a wonderful husband. I have a thriving business. I do everything that I want to do every day. My life is transcendently amazing. And it came from applying this lever. So that's why I'm so excited to talk about it.
And there is this paradox with it. On the one hand, it's just a little lever. It's just a cute little pink lever. It's no big deal. Just a fun American rebranding of psychotherapy. It's just a little cute thing. But on the other hand, there's this like profound, deep, mystical level, transformative practice. It's both of those things at once, right?
Well, yeah, you get it, Mark. You get it. Yeah, because it's
the sledgehammer spiritually at the same time.
It's a sledgehammer to this, very, I don't know, how do I say, entrenched idea that we are all these isolated little egos, and we all only want good things, and we're all operating on our own power. And it's just not true. In fact, we are all fractal holograms of a divine wholeness. We all are, one way to talk about it is we're souls. We are immortal souls. And the way that I think of it is my immortal soul is not just interested in sunshine and lollipops. It's also interested in it's so interested in the total experience of duality, which is what this realm of incarnation offers. This realm offers deep experiences of pain and alienation, of failure and humiliation, of, everybody is subject to old age, disease, and death, like the Buddha pointed out. Why would my soul come into incarnation if it wasn't interested in the whole show? It's just the good parts. Because it's impossible to have just the good parts.
Well, behind you, I think I can see both Jesus and Aleister Crowley. Is that?
That's true. That is how we.
My mother is Crowley, by the way. She's my mother is a Crowley, so it's part of the Irish. So what's the other one? Is it like lesbian Satan witches or something?
Precisely. That's Promethea as Babylon from the Alan Moore comic book. And there's two Promethea pictures. There's a globe that's covered with the Sephira of the Tree of Life, because I'm currently teaching on that. Oh. And there's our sweet Lord Jesus, and and Aleister Crowley.
Pretty.
Yeah, I'm weird. I'm very weird. We can get into how weird my thing
You're an interesting woman already. I'm experiencing that. Good. So, I mean, it's not that weird that if people can like being spanked or choked, and many people do in my limited experience, they enjoy these things, then it's not that weird that they might enjoy being poor or being whatever.
Precisely. So that's what I realized. So the part of the little story I left out so far is that at this time when I was poor, I was also part of a major sex cult, a now famous, infamous sex cult. There's documentaries online about it. Yeah. Called One Taste. And One Taste was led by a woman named Nicole Daedone, who had a famous TED Talk called Orgasm, the Missing Nutrient in the Western Woman. I think it had some of the most TED Talk views of all time. And this was a practice. Yeah, you made the glove motion. Have you heard of it? Orgasmic meditation?
It was really in the cult, and I was quite worried about him for a while. And I'm like, so you're giving girls spiritual hand jobs? Is that what it's about? And
that's what it's about.
Trying to get me to come along. I'm like, I'm good, man. I'm good.
It was the best of cults. It was the worst of cults. It was. I was really on the fringes of it. I wasn't in the California scene so much where it was like most crazy, but we were just a little parochial outpost of the sex cult in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And but I was living in a house that was dedicated to the practice. I was living in an orgasmic meditation house, and was having my clitoris stroked twice a day for like 30 minutes, so like a total hour of stroking. And by the way, for anybody who's not familiar with orgasmic meditation, the practice itself is pretty cool, just like yoga is cool, but that Bikram guy, not so much. The practice involved a stroker stroking a woman's clitoris in a very precise, gentle fashion for 15 minutes. And there's a timer, and there's this whole series of steps. It's very defined. So anyways, I was doing that. So I was very in touch with my sexual energy, and I was very in touch with, in that cult, that little culture, we were working with this idea, which I happen to think is true, which is that the truth is orgasmic, which is that when we're really vulnerably honest, there is an intense sensational quality to that. And you can think about, telling somebody I love you for the first time. There's like cheeks flush, there's, and so I was experimenting with this idea, and I was also doing the work of Byron Katie, which involves questioning your thoughts. And so at the time I was working as a coach, and I was making not that much money. I had written, my first book is called Awaken Your Genius, which is a creativity self-help book. So I was doing creativity coaching. And I think I was making like $100 an hour as a coach. And I knew people who were making $1,000 an hour as a coach, which blew my mind because $1,000 an hour is so much more money than anybody I ever knew in Pittsburgh to make. And I was doing the work with Byron Katie on, people should want to pay me $1,000 an hour. Is that true? Can I absolutely know that it's true? How do I react when I believe that thought? The Byron Katie questions. And I got to turning it around to absolutely nobody should ever want to pay me any money for coaching. And I felt this like zing through my body. Like my genitals were like, I was like, oh my gosh, I am so turned on by not being valued. Obviously, that has to do with why I'm not being valued because sex is magical. There's a magical quality to sexual energy. And what we're truly turned on by, we will create more of in our lives.
Yeah.
There's a magnetic quality to it. So the process of becoming really honest with myself about what turns me on and how that relates to what I'm actually experiencing in my life, becoming honest with myself, like, whoa, I don't just have a bedroom kink. I don't just want to be spanked and tied up. This is something that affects my entire life, my ability to pay bills and have a career and everything. And what I found was I was like, okay, well, this is what's going on. This is true for me. So I'll just let this be true for me. I'll just let myself enjoy it because, being ashamed of enjoying it, telling myself I shouldn't enjoy it, that didn't seem to change it. That didn't do anything. Consciously, of course, I didn't want to be poor. I wanted to be rich, rich, rich. But anyways, I just decided I'll just let myself feel what I feel. And of course, I was familiar with Carl Jung and this idea of the unconscious mind, and it's possible to have desires that we're not conscious of at all. So clearly on a bodily level, there was a desire, there was a pleasure response. So that's where I came up with the practice of existential kink, which is just setting time aside each day to let the part of me that enjoys what I'm experiencing fully have those sensations. And it is similar to setting up a consensual container within a kink kind of relationship, because it's like, okay, I set this time aside. I'm going to open up to experiencing these sensations without judgment, with no negativity or fear. I'm just going to go into them. Just like I could make an appointment with a lover to have him drip hot candle wax on my back and open up to those sensations. So what I found,
you can go more hardcore on this show, by the way.
okay.
This isn't PG-13, okay? So whatever you're happy to show.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, that's my gentle.
That's your New York Times one, right? Like,
Yeah, yes. So I found that over a couple weeks of really opening up to the pleasure that I felt, that I could access a full orgasmic experience just thinking about how much I fucking loved having a negative bank balance and being turned down for jobs and turned down for clients and being screwed by society. It was like, whoa, I actually love this. And in that process, it changed my entire experience of myself, because rather than seeing myself as this pathetic, put upon, resentful person, I was experiencing myself as a deeply fulfilled person. And sure, it was weird, but I told, I was like, nobody else needs to understand this. This is just what makes me happy, and I'm allowed to enjoy it as much as I do. And it was really crazy because didn't take very long. It was about a month into this, but I started getting ideas about things that I could do in my coaching business. And these were not like groundbreaking rocket science ideas. These are things that are in internet marketing books but to me they just seemed so foreign before, because I had a very
implementation, right? Like there's a lot of people who hear a good talk by Alex Hormozy but don't implement the simple effective things he's saying, whatever, right?
Exactly. So my identity changed through the existential kink practice, and suddenly I found myself able to do these steps for my business that had previously seemed just impossible. And within months, I was making $10,000 a month. So I've been scraping by, I think, on like $1,500 a month. And anyways, $10,000 a month. And I moved to Bali, and my life has never been the same since then. So yeah.
All right. So it's not just that we recognize that part of us on some level gets a secondary payoff or really enjoys it, But by doing that, there's a sort of shadow integration process that happens that enables us to move on from that, right? Because someone might do that and think, oh, she's just going to become even poorer because now she's really getting into it. What's the thing that enabled you to go from enjoying being poor on some level and being abused by society, I'm a victim, to that next part? Is it just like fully enjoying it? Then there's just a kind of organic transformation there?
Yeah, so there is, so I can give you sort of the metaphor that I use. Well, let me think about it. I'll just answer your question more directly, and then if you want to hear my fancy metaphor down the line, we can. But the direct answer is, when you are completely in enjoyment, that is not a vibration of poverty. That is a vibration of profound gratitude and enjoyment. And that is the essence of wealth. That is the essence of creativity. So in some ways, existential kink is very boring and cliche and in line, actually, with all of those law of attraction teachings that used to make me want to throw up because they were so saccharine. But it's like when there's an alchemy. So the alchemy is through the total surrender and the total enjoyment. And there's actually an ego death in it. Speaking of Mr. Crowley, it's an actual like complete surrender into the abyss, into Babylon herself. And in that moment of surrender, there's a marriage between the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. So in that moment of marriage, there's a big release of energy, and to me, it seems there's a fertilization where the unconscious, which is like the womb, which is the feminine part of us, which is like the big, dark, mysterious matrix part of us, that womb gets fertilized in that moment of joining, when the conscious mind finally humbles itself enough to be like, you know what, I want what you want. Let's get together, and gets on the side of the unconscious, the shadowy desires. There's a union and there's a fertilization. So that's what I experienced, is that my unconscious mind became fertilized in alignment with the desires of my conscious mind. And my conscious mind always desired to be rich, always wanted to be a millionaire, always wanted to travel the world and have a happy family and everything. So that in the humbling of having my conscious mind come into humble agreement with what my unconscious mind was already creating, which was all this poverty and anxiety and tension, there was an alchemical union, which completely changed my life. And that's what I teach people how to do, is how to open up to that alchemical union.
What are the most common ones you come across? So kind of like enjoying being poor. I see that in sort of hippie communities. There's moral superiority around it, and kind of, you know, and we're, just to be clear, we're not talking to like a mother of 5 in Chad at this point, right? Like, I want to be clear.
I mean, obviously there's societal shadows, there's collective shadows that create very painful situations. But yeah, people in the Western world, there's plenty of, and that was certainly part of it for me, is I had romanticized poverty. I didn't want to be part of the machine and the man and everything. And so, yeah, that's a big thing in the hippie spiritual community. So that's big. Another big thing is rejection in love. So unrequited love.
Okay.
Or emotionally unavailable people or abusive people. That's a huge field where existential kink gets applied. And there's a story about that in my book. Also, I was in a really scary, abusive relationship with a guy who was like crazy jealous and crazy controlling. And I kept breaking up with him and then calling him up and getting back together with him.
And some people do that with a repeated partner, right? The repetition compulsion kind of.
Oh, yes. Yes. And I was not able to get free of that until I admitted to myself that there was a part of me, you know, as much as I hated his controllingness, there was a part of me that was like, oh my God, I found it so pleasurable. It was like he treated me like I was as desirable as heroin, and he had to control his supply. And there was some kind of power in being something that somebody was addicted to. As horrible as it was, I had to admit to myself that I had that desire to be addictively craved. And when I could really admit that to myself and really let myself enjoy it, let that become conscious, because it cannot become conscious as long as it's shamed. I have to be able to let myself feel it completely shamelessly. I was able to become free of that relationship and able to have much healthier relationship partners going forward.
Who doesn't want to be heroine? We even use the heroine of a novel, right? The desirable female of a novel. Yeah. Okay, so we've got unrequited love. My inner 17-year-old was listening. And we've got poverty. Third big one.
Well, I mean, I've talked to a lot of women who are a lot older than 17, and unrequited love, oh, it's
People
big.
take that their whole lives, do they?
Oh,
It's their
it's,
thing, the unavailable man.
yes, yes. Yeah, so either just like somebody who's totally not interested in a relationship, or somebody who is not all there because of some other issues, cheating, gambling, anything, and it goes deep. But yeah, so there's also, I mean, there's more single people than ever before right now, because we're all anyways, so people, yeah.
Why
So
aren't we
that's,
breeding? Why do you think we aren't breeding? There's economic explanations, chemical explanations, postmodern cultural explorations. Why are we not fucking? Like this is we're like the generation that's getting laid the least in human history.
you know
So
what? That's a deep, beautiful question. I mean, I actually think it's I think it's part of a process that is ultimately good, which is a process of people becoming more and more aware of themselves as individual wholes, rather than, excuse me, just being enmeshed in family systems or whatever, where everybody just used to be unconsciously enmeshed and having sex and babies all the time. And now a different kind of consciousness is coming in. So obviously we do need to learn how to have individual consciousness and have babies if we want to continue into the long term as a species. But I think that's part of what it is just there's a mutation going on in human consciousness, and that mutation affects how we mate and have children.
interesting. Like it, mutation. Let's talk about the meditations then. So you have sort of practically how do you do this with people? You give them meditations to contemplate, to enjoy.
Yeah,
Like
so great question. So the way that I initially imagined existential kink was just as a solo meditation practice, and that's usually how I do it. And it has since, there was so much response to it, so much interest in it, that we ended up creating existential kink coaching. So there's an existential kink coach training program that my business offers called Penetrate. It's currently running right now. And existential kink coaching has a lot to do with learning how to hold a radically approving presence. So how to listen to somebody's problems and just be completely in approval of everything that they're talking about, including the things that they're very judgmental of themselves about and very judgmental of others about. Just really how to hold a position of kind of seeing the divine perfection in one's client. So that doesn't involve lectures about the shadow or psychotherapy or existential kink at all. That's sort of just a general attitude of delight towards one's coaching client. Sometimes people have read the book and they want to be guided through existential kink meditations. So that's something that I've done many times with clients and that I teach people, that people learn how to do in our Penetrate program. But a lot of it has to do with just really meeting people playfully, because so there's the existential kink meditation, which I described, which is like setting time aside to really enjoy something fully. But there's also the existential kink attitude towards life, which is, like I said, that we're all basically, we're divine enjoyers. We're here, we're part of a great divine artwork that's unfolding. It includes extreme pleasure and extreme pain. And unless we know how to allow both of those to move through us with love, we're just going to be kind of floundering.
so it's
So
kind
there's
of a worldview, and there's like coaching, there's the meditations, and there's also just like, hey, this is a kind of way you can go through your life, right? There's a sort of worldview aspect to it.
Yes, and it's a worldview aspect, going back to the Crowley and the Jesus and the Babylon posters, that's very in line with and connected with ancient mystery schools. So that's another thing that we offer is sleepover mystery school. So it's yeah, it's a lot about coming in touch with our immortal divine nature.
Where are you going with all this? Do you have like, is it just like cashing in by using sexy names on stuff? I mean, like, you know, it's like part of me wonders if you're just using kind of provocative sexual names to make kind of cool therapy more interesting. Like, which is okay, right? There's worse things. Or is there a master plan? What's the evil genius
Oh,
scheme?
wow. I love this question. Is there much of it? Well, so yeah, I love that you noticed that, Mark, because in some ways, existential kink is just forgiveness. It's forgiveness with a sexy twist. Because if you truly are enjoying everything that comes your way and letting go, that's pretty much equivalent to what existential kink adds up to. So yeah, in some ways, it's forgiveness and love for the Pluto and Scorpio generation. You know, all of us millennials have Pluto. I don't know if you're into astrology, but Pluto, okay. Pluto and Scorpio is a particular placement that loves darkness and loves occult stuff. So yes, sells like hotcakes, and that's wonderful. And what's my grand plan? I mean, my grand plan is a complete revival of mystery culture on planet Earth and a renaissance for human consciousness, which involves becoming alchemically literate. So I'm on a campaign of alchemical literacy. So, you know, back in the day, reading and writing used to only be the arts of kings. Kings and priests were the only ones.
Catholic Church spoke Latin, no one else did, so they had the power, right?
Yes, they had all the power, and it was sort of generally thought that regular people were just too stupid to be able to read and write anyways. And we gradually learned that that's not true. Basically, anybody can learn how to read and write, anybody can have the vast power of literacy. So likewise, alchemy and this sort of divine art of having the small self come in contact with the larger self, like I love your beautiful Vitruvian man image behind you, which to me speaks to like the divine proportions of humanity. Um, the great work used to be the accomplishment of just a handful of dedicated mystics, yogis, people who spent their entire lives doing this. It's my belief that as consciousness is changing, the time has come where everybody needs to do the great work, and everybody can do the great work. Everybody can achieve the alchemical marriage of the conscious and the unconscious minds, of the feminine and masculine dimensions of our being. And that's my vision. That's what I'm doing my work to bring about. And so Ken Wilber, are you familiar at all with Ken Wilber's work?
Ray's personal friend, got him on the podcast in a month's time.
Well, so Ken Wilber talks about integral consciousness. And he says that that's what we're headed towards, and that about 5% of the planet is currently at integral consciousness. And we would need about 10% of everybody to be at that consciousness for integral consciousness to become the dominant sort of new consciousness on the planet. And integral consciousness includes being able to equally value things, which, you know, currently society, at least in the US, is super crazy polarized.
Okay.
Like
Let's
Democrats.
we have fun with that. Can we get off on Trump? I want
We
all
have
the
one of
liberals
my
out
favorite
there.
people.
I want all the liberals out there to come in their pants about Donald Trump. Can we do? I know it's a big ask. I know I'm gonna get canceled for even trying. Do you want to go there? Like, what were
Sure,
the
let's talk about this wonderful gift of Donald Trump. What about him?
how do we? I mean, I personally find him hilarious, but maybe not the best human being. How do all my liberal listeners get off on him? Because they're about to lose an election and they fucking know it.
Oh
So
yeah, well, it's
how do they
very
get off on
simple. They need to come into deep confrontation with their own narcissism.
because that's what he represents, you think? Yeah.
That's absolutely what he represents. I mean, who could, giant, you know, Trump Tower, platinum plated toilets, you know, I'm Greatest.
desire for wealth and power. I mean, he represents all the lower
Yes.
chakras in a way,
I
right?
mean, absolutely. And a lot of liberals, I used to be one. I used to read the New York Times every day.
Recovering liberal. Me too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you are also. What got you out of it? Well, what jolted you out?
Hearing someone give my exact views on Brexit in a repulsive manner and realizing the team I was on was ideologically possessed.
Oh, fascinating. Fascinating. I had a
Intelligent,
series.
right? Just growing up and going, everyone's half right, half wrong. So it's not like
Uh-huh.
half the world's just idiots. So.
Yeah, I had my experience came when it was during the pandemic and I was reading the New York Times for my daily dose of hating Trump and, getting afraid of the world. And I read an op-ed about how nobody should ever leave their house again. And if you leave your house, you're a white supremacist and you need to get a vaccine or else you're a white supremacist. And it was just so like cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. I was like, I don't want to be associated with these people anymore.
So I'm just going to say we're going to give $100 shop voucher to every liberal who fully climaxes to Donald Trump after listening. So just Google message customer service. Virginia should be very nice. Say, I want to claim the $100. You don't need to show any physical evidence. We'll take it on trust. So to all our listeners.
Fantastic. Yeah, I had that. So I did that. So I personally had that experience where I was like, like I said, I was like so deep in hatred of Donald Trump, like just the sight of the man's face, like turned my stomach so much. I like cried on the day when he won the election.
Screamed at the sky.
I was in it. And yeah, gradually, as I did again, the Byron Katie inquiry work about it, I realized he was a perfect reflection of me. And I think he's a perfect reflection of certainly liberals in the United States. Like, for example, I don't know, when I think of, I guess I've just really turned my mind inside out in a fun way, because when I think of liberals now, I think of narcissism that is absolutely in perfect equilibrium with the narcissism of Donald Trump. I can discern no difference.
Neck and neck.
Precisely the same.
And we do have some really nice liberal guests on as well. I just had a really good discussion with David Emerson of Trauma Sensitive Yoga, who is a liberal who can actually listen, and that's a really good conversation. But yeah, I've had plenty of liberal guests who have such narcissism that if I challenge them in any way on their politics, they end the interview sometimes.
Right, which is exactly, which is ego fragility, precisely equivalent to
the fragility of the narcissist who can't handle the narcissistic rage. Okay, so what would be a challenge for you? Because clearly, I mean, you're like, 8th tier super guru sensei if you can do Trump. So like what's your like, I'm Mark, you know what, I'm not sure I can really take this on board. Like who would be your
yeah, well, in you mean in terms of people that are
famous
unlikable?
people or historical figures? I mean, like what's like, no, I can't get off on Genghis Khan. Like what?
Oh, right. Well, indeed. I mean, certainly here's yeah, Donald Trump is pretty, well, yeah, to me pretty easy, but there's definitely situations in the world that my heart simply grieves for, deep grief. So it's not like I'm saying everything is sexy fun all the time. What I'm saying is everything is part of this divine movement and artwork, and how can I be in humble appreciation and willingness to feel fully everything, including the sexual energy, including the profound, heartbreaking grief. I mean, when I think of any child, like I said, I experienced a lot of child abuse. When I think of any child experiencing any kind of abuse, I experience tons of heartbreaking grief. Oftentimes when I see people begging on the streets, I think about what their lives must have been like, and probably they were abused, and I can very easily, get into weeping about that. So it's definitely not about being hard-hearted or, having a attitude towards life that diminishes anybody's pain.
Not laughing at anyone. We're not punching down here, right? Like I might be able to sort of notice there's a certain excitement when I'm in a bomb shelter in Ukraine, but that doesn't mean I wish it on anyone else, right? So
Yes, well, I think I think the overarching ethos about existential kink that I'm interested in people getting the message of is humanity has a ton of unconscious pleasure in very dark stuff. And the more that we're able to stop shaming ourselves for that and just allow it to arise, allow it to move through, allow it to become conscious, then it can be transmuted, it can be alchemized, and our experience can come into into alignment with our conscious ideals. So you mentioned earlier sort of like the lower chakras and the upper chakras. So the way that I think of it is that lots of people, especially hippies and liberals, are very divided, and they have these beautiful upper chakra ideals, right? Of like one, bounty for everybody. They want to see a beautiful, flourishing world, and so do I. And then there's these, lower chakra desires for sex and territory and power. And then there's the heart. And the heart, in most people, I think of is it's just sort of weak. It's just like weak and sentimental and cut off from the power source. So the way that I understand, one of the ways that I think about existential kink is it's like usually the upper chakras are just sort of radiating up this way, the heart's going this way, the desires of the lower chakras are going down. One way to think about existential kink is it's reversing the flows. It's sending the upper chakra energy into the heart and the lower chakra energy into the heart. So where they get to meet and there's a big release and energy. So it's like so the higher chakra energy can also often manifest as like, this is how things should be. This is the ideal. Things are not matching my ideal. But instead, we take all of that and we send that downward, and we send that into treating what's already happening as if it is the ideal, as if it is perfect, praising the perfection of what is already happening in the mystery that's already unfolding. And that redirection of energy and finding the perfection and the pleasure or the heartbreak or the grief, whatever it is, just completely opening to what's already present without judging it, has a impact that just liberates a lot of energy and makes a lot of creativity possible.
love it. Love it. What else? Where do we want to go with this? Oh, look what I found. I've got a pirate patch. You're talking about your pirate ship in your eye. I have fucked eyes, so I have a pirate patch that appeared on my desk while we we're talking. Who would you have on your pirate ship if you were to like get any of the great thinkers or sages from history? You're the captain. You're Captain Blackhead or whatever. And who's on your pirate ship? Go for it.
Oh, wow. Well, I would have to invite old Crowley. I'm not sure that he would be a good guest. He might be a complete asshole, but I'd be curious to get to know him. I would love to hang out with Oscar Wilde. Florence Farr is somebody who's very important to me. She was in the original Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. She was actually Crowley's initiator. I would love to hang out with Florence Farr. Wait, I probably said Carl Jung. Let's see. I'm trying to think in terms of more.
Who's walking the plank?
Who's walking the plank? In terms of great people of history that I wouldn't want to hang out with.
Yeah. I'm just you talk about eye patches. I've got an eye patch. You've got my pirate thing going. I think it's a fun metaphor.
Mm-hmm. Whoever invented the notion of corporations as people, I would love for them to they can go walk a plank. Yeah.
Nice. I feel like we've climaxed and we're sort of coming down now. We're, landing nicely here. This is good. Bit of aftercare. Anything we haven't talked about that you'd love to talk about?
Oh, wow. Great question, Mark.
You'd love to get asked about that you never get asked about on interviews.
Oh, wow. I mean, I love being asked about the mystery school, if you would care to talk about that.
How would one begin to get into that? If I heard the term, it sounds cool. I'm a listener. I'm curious. I'm mystery school curious. What would be some first steps?
Yeah, well, you could Google the temple at Eleusis. So Eleusis. It was a temple that ran for about 4,000 years. I mean, scholars debate 2,000 to 4,000 years, about 20 miles outside of Athens. It was the oldest, longest running mystery school in the Mediterranean. And they celebrated the mysteries of Demeter. But there were mystery schools throughout the Mediterranean for 2,000, I mean, for thousands of years.
Going in Greek, I have a little pilgrimage to Greece planned for December. My colleague Virginia, who I'm sure loves you, is going to take me on a little pilgrimage around Greece. Does it still exist?
Yes, I'm pretty sure that, well, no, the temple itself was brought down by crazy monks in 400 AD. But I do think there's some rocks at Eleusis. I mean, I will, someday I want to go make a
You want me to
pilgrimage.
do a selfie with a copy of your book there?
Yes, that would be amazing. That would be so amazing. But basically, the idea of a mystery school, what makes it different than a regular sort of school, is in a mystery school initiation. So this is also what makes it different from exoteric religion, is the initiate is identified with the god whose mystery school it is. So there's mysteries of Isis, Osiris, Mithras. Christianity actually started as a mystery school. A lot of people don't know that, but in the first few hundred years, it was very much influenced by the Hellenic mystery schools surrounding it. So people would practice being identified with the crucified and resurrected Christ. So usually that's a major theme in mystery schools, is there's a god who dies and is reborn. So could be Dionysus, could be Osiris, or there's a god who goes into the underworld and comes back. So Ishtar did that. And so yeah, it's about the mysteries of life and death, pain and pleasure, masculine and feminine, these pairs of opposites that are beyond our mental comprehension. So a mystery school consists in rituals that are meant to give an embodied gnosis experience of connection to immortality, of connection to our souls, of who we are beyond this body. So for example, in ancient Greece, it was well known that the initiates of Eleusis had the benefits of felt knowledge of their immortal souls and prosperity. Because once people get felt knowledge of their immortal souls, it's not just an airy idea, like they know, they're like fucking immortal, yo. They're able to succeed a lot in life. What's that?
Yo, immortal bitches. That was
Yeah, I'm immortal, bitches. I'm a spiritual bro. I'm here forever. You can't get rid of me. So that is so our mystery school is called Sleepover Mystery School, and it is connected both to the mystery school at Eleusis and also to Aleister Crowley, the Golden Dawn. So there's very strong Hermetic, Thelemic, and I would say Christian Gnostic influences. But it's also just a crazy adventure. So we call it a sleepover because it's like a sleepover parties in the tradition.
right? That's also
What's
your
that?
Is that your podcast name?
That's the name of my podcast also, yes, so the Sleepover Podcast, which I do with my dear friend Layla, who also runs the mystery school with me. And we have a 9-month initiation where we both have online meetings, but we also have these 4 in-person ritual experiences that we take people through. And people experience a massive transformation in their lives and in their felt experience of their immortality. So, which leads to ongoing membership in a lifelong magical order for those who go through the initiation. So we have regular yearly meetings of the magical order, and we have just a whole ton of fun. So it's part sexy teenage slumber party, part super somber, antique, serious mystery initiation. And there's a lot of neon lights and dancing and insane far out ritual.
Pretty sure I've been banned from the Teenage Trump Summer Party, but it sounds good. I recommend it to some other people.
Yeah, there's no actual teenagers, just to be clear. No actual teenagers are harmed in my mystery school. It's teenage, eternal, youthful spirit.
It's grown up. We're gonna have to put the warning on this one for the
because it's very grown. It is grown.
All right. So I need to go take a pee. So we're gonna have to wrap up. This is my level of professionalism. So how do people, you seem happy and rich. How do people make you even happier and richer? Where do they go?
Thank you, Mark. They can go to theimmortalcollege.com and join my email list, and they will get information about all the things that we offer. There's also a website there on the Immortal College. They can click and learn more about Sleepover Mystery School, join the wait list. They can buy all of my online programs, which are really wonderful and fun. And they can listen to the Sleepover podcast, which is on Spotify, anywhere podcasts are available, Apple Podcasts. And it was such a delight talking to you today, Mark. Thank you so much.
Standard normal interview, right? Like you've had all the time, right? Just exactly.
So much fun.
Not like the other girls. Okay, that was wonderful. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you again to Vish, my PA, who I think's a bit kinky, who first told me I should read your. Actually, my first friend was a millionaire friend, and 2 years ago I was in £500,000 of debt, and he said, "You're probably enjoying this on some level." I was like, "Go fuck yourself." And then I said, "You know what? Maybe I am." And he was the first one that flagged you. Because he'd made money, lost it, made money, and
Now I'm on another podcast where you talk about your experience with existential kink. Now I feel like I should have asked you about it because that's
it's all about you. Let's leave it there. One more time on the website.
theimmortalcollege.com.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.